Now, tensions with Syria heating up and the U.S. deploying armed nuclear-powered aircraft carriers to the Middle East following Assad's alleged chemical attack on his own people.
This is where the president has to stand tall in the saddle. This strike is very important, obviously, but also what's going to be the strategy behind it.
Today on Capitol Hill, Mark Zuckerberg is gearing up for day 2 in the hot seat.
It's up to us to put the pressure on this company and hit him in the pocketbook. What if these conservatives that are generating millions of views for you, what if we suddenly just stop?
Today is the deadline to hand over unredacted Russia probe documents to the House Intel Committee.
We're not messing around here. We're not going to just hold in contempt. We will have a plan to hold in contempt and to impeach.
Look, James Comey is preparing for a media blitz. The ousted FBI director tweeting this picture of the setup for his first TV interview.
Sir, were you trying to cross to America? What was happening there?
So you had 2 individuals that were attempting to illegally enter the U.S.
Well, the time is 7:01 in New York City, and thank you very much for joining us once again, making us part of your daily routine, waking up with Fox and Friends.
We appreciate it. We have a lot to cover. You know, the president is saying, we're all wondering how the president is going to react to what Assad did, those chemical attacks. We saw the pictures of the babies and children and the women. And the president is tweeting this morning, and here it is. He says, Russia vows to shoot down any and all missiles fired at Syria. Get ready, Russia, because they will be coming. Nice and new and smart. You shouldn't be partners with a gas-killing animal who kills his people and enjoys it.
I think we know how he feels about this, don't we?
Meanwhile, this is in response to what the Russia's ambassador to Lebanon on Hezbollah TV said this morning. It's Al Manar. He says if there is a strike by the Americans, the missiles will be downed, and even the sources from those missiles will be fired. The UN ambassador to the Russian ambassador to the United Nations yesterday had a similar thing to say, but it was in Russian. And he's threatening us that we better not strike back after Saturday's chlorine gas attack that killed 40, including mostly women and children, and sent 500 to the hospital.
That's right. Well, it sounded like after the president made those comments in the cabinet room a couple of days ago that the strike was imminent. It was going to happen immediately. But late last night, our Pentagon sources were telling us that the United States didn't have everything lined up the way they wanted it at that point. Keep in mind, down in Norfolk, Virginia today, the Harry S. Truman Carrier Strike Group is being deployed. Meanwhile, the USS Donald Cook has arrived off the Syrian coast. Things are lining up. Ollie North and Jack Keane had these observations about what could happen in the next day or two over in the Eastern Mediterranean.
If you're going to use more than just a handful of aircraft, you're going to have to have places to recover them. You're going to have places refuel and rearm. You have to have search and rescue assets in place. And so I think there were a lot of people thinking maybe it was going to happen tonight, and I couldn't imagine it.
Listen, Iran, Russia, and Syria, they are pariahs in international community. We have got to go after them in a very public way, condemnation, sanctions, and drag them in to the International Criminal Court. I mean, it will make no difference to Assad and no difference to the Iranians, but it will make a difference to Putin. His public image is very important to him, particularly at home. We got to really go after these guys in a public way.
I know as General Keane knows what he's talking about. He's directly connected to people in the Pentagon. When he speaks, understand he's with the policymakers, and that's the type of respect he garners within the upper reaches of the military. And I hope people listen to him because he seems to have the battle plan too. Remember, he authored the surge. He picked up the phone from his basement and called President Bush. Remember, keep in mind too, anybody who says we're going easy on the Russians has not been paying attention. We are now pressuring the UK banks to stop taking money from the Russians, to start divesting yourself from the high-priced real estate that the Russians are involved in. Even tell them to stop investing, tell them to sell their equity in the Chelsea soccer team. Same thing with Europe. While we're doing that, their market has dropped maybe 10, 20%. The ruble has dropped 20%, and their steel company has dropped 50%. These last round of sanctions, even Bill Browder, who famously was the force behind the Magnitsky Act, said they have never, this last round of sanctions is the most forceful he's seen in years.
Our Western allies are also helping us. We're all considering possible military action, and those birthing pains are getting closer and closer together, as you can see. We're sending out these carriers, getting them in place. Also, Europe Air Traffic Control, the Eurocontrol, is warning airlines over the Mediterranean Sea to be very cautious and be wary of a sudden military leaders in the Oval Office.
That's right. And he tweeted out a picture, and he talked about the top military commanders saying the greatest fighting force the world has ever seen. Right now, the administration continues to rally international support. Don't be surprised if when the shooting starts, it would be the United States, Great Britain, France, and maybe the Israelis as well. And we also, it's interesting because they're already telegraphing, while not the exact time it's going to start, the major newspapers today are talking about the target, and that is the chemical weapons storage facilities in Syria. So obviously, it's like if you're in the area, get out of there because we're about to blow it up.
Right. And how big it will be, we don't know. But sources are telling us that the president said it's going to be much more aggressive than it was a year ago after the same thing happened in Syria.
Because they immediately went back to the missile strikes using the same military bases we had. A couple of things. They're now moving their assets to Russian bases, number one. Number two, I'd like to know if this is a successful 3 or 4 day campaign, what happens next? No more ISIS to chase out. We don't like Assad, but we're not saying you got to get out of here. We don't really have a free Syrian army that we can count on, really understand. So what do we want long term? At the very least, if we can't figure it out, I hope they're figuring it out in this situation.
All right. I'll tell you what Devin Nunes wants. He wants all those unredacted documents. And don't you remember, it is April 11th. Today is the deadline day for the DOJ to hand over those documents.
That's right. And while they got a whole bunch of documents, congressional investigators did, they got 3,000 documents. I think
out of the million?
On Monday. Right. So now they're up to 6,000. But the 3,000 that the Department of Justice handed over on Monday apparently were largely duplicates. Things that the investigators had already seen, but the DOJ gets to say, hey, look, we gave you a bunch of papers. Well, they're worthless. Here's the thing. What they want at the core is they want the very original paperwork that started the spying on the Trump people. And so far, the Department of Justice has only given heavily redacted versions of it. And Devin Nunes says, unless I get it today, there's going to be hell to pay.
I can tell you this. We are going to get the document. We are going to get the 2 pages. So they can either cough them up now, or it will get really complicated starting tomorrow night, and we'll have to take all the steps necessary in order to get the documents. We're not going to just hold in contempt. We will have a plan to hold in contempt and to impeach.
So we got the 1.2 million documents, so Michael Horowitz has them. We've only gotten a couple of thousand. So they hired John Lausch over the last few days, the U.S. attorney, to oversee the production of these papers and expedite them. He was on with Bret Baier yesterday. He'll be joining us today. He says, well, there's the problem is you got to go through the documents to find out what applies. And Jason Chaffetz had a great line. He goes, don't go through them. Just hand them to us. We are the committee that can be trusted, and we always have been, and we need to see it unredacted.
Right.
Because if you cannot trust the members of Congress, what are they doing in that position?
Well, and Devin Nunes is referring to 2 pages. There are only 2 that would lead them to allow for the spying?
To figure out what the justification for the spying was.
Those 2 pieces of papers were just 2 that they gave to the FISA court to get permission to spy?
That's all they want to see at this point. But keep in mind as well, a whole bunch of the things that have been redacted so far, the redactions were things that proved the bias at the Department of Justice. So keep in mind, who is redacting things? The Department of Justice is getting rid of stuff that makes them look bad. It's essentially the same as getting to grade your own paper.
But the thing is, you don't know what you don't know. You don't know what you're going to find when you go through there. We know what you want, but you actually don't know what's in there. But we know what is in there, and that's interesting enough. Meanwhile, as you know, James Comey's book comes out next week. It's called To Higher Loyalty. And Axios reports that ABC sat down, George Stephanopoulos sat down and spoke to James Comey, and it was so riveting. They called it surreal experience. He answered every question and referred to our president, current president, as a mob boss. And they said this thing is the biggest thing they're going to have, biggest challenge they're going to have is knocking it into 1 hour. I know Bret Baier is going to have the 3rd interview. Stephanopoulos has got the 1st interview.
All right. Well, and the book comes out next Tuesday. I'm sure we'll show clips. When is it going to air?
It's going to air on April the 15th. Okay. It's going to be a 2020 special with George. He did. Mr. Comey did tweet out a picture yesterday showing the setup at his house. There's George's chair. There's my chair. Away we go.
My house doesn't normally look like this.
It will be interesting to see how much he says because he is bound by law to not reveal certain things.
I will say this. He's got 9 memos. I've talked to people that read the 9 memos. They dare James Comey to read the 9 memos out.
He can't.
But if it does come out and he decides to get it or go through his anonymous source, the Columbia professor that talks to the New York Times, who happens to be his attorney now, I imagine if that leaks out and that facts come out there, it actually makes the president look good.
Is it all for publicity to make him look better?
Well, who's going to buy the book? Democrats hate him because he blew up Hillary, and Republicans hate him.
That's what I said, but then it ended up hitting. Did really well in pre-sale.
I think a lot of people are going to buy the book, and a lot of them because they think it's going to be anti-Trump because Trump's the one that fired him.
All right, stay tuned for that. In the meantime, it is almost 7:11 here in New York City. Good morning.
Good morning to you guys, to you at home as well. Let's get you caught up on some of your other stories that we're following. Another California city joins a lawsuit against the state's sanctuary law. The city of Orange voting overnight to oppose the bill which limits local law enforcement from cooperating with federal immigration authorities. Orange joins 7 other Orange County cities that oppose the bill. Meantime, Virginia's Democratic governor welcoming illegal immigrants with open arms. Ralph Northam vetoing a bill to ban sanctuary cities in the state. Michigan's Supreme Court hearing arguments today on whether a person has the right to openly carry guns on school property. This just hours after the Broward County School Board in Florida unanimously voted against allowing district employees to be armed. That's the same district where 17 people were gunned down in February. A massive illegal immigration sweep at the Arizona border. Agents nabbing a suspected MS-13 gang member. The El Salvadorian national telling agents he intended to travel to Los Angeles. 60 other illegals, including a Mexican national and 15 Guatemalan nationals, also rounded up at the border. The royal wedding invites are out. Did you get yours? Well, President Trump or former President Obama both made the cut. According to reports, the reason behind the decision is that Prince Harry is not likely to become king, so it isn't necessary for any political leaders to attend. Around 600 guests are expected to witness the couple say "I do" at Windsor Castle next month. Did any of you guys get invited?
I think Ainsley's going to go. She's going to be covering the event.
Are you?
I'm going to be covering the event.
That's awesome. So you are invited.
That's right.
I'm not invited to the actual wedding.
Well, someone invited you to go.
From a roof.
Oh, no, wait a minute. Because you were asking for money from Brian and Jillian and me to buy the wedding gift. Holy cow.
Yeah, what would you buy them? The couple that truly has everything.
Where are they registered?
Crockpot. Get them a
Where would they
Crock
be
Pot.
registered? What are some of those department stores? Harrods.
Right.
Thanks, Janice.
That's right.
When in doubt, a
Harrods.
MyPillow.
Good gift. All right, we've been telling you about it. Facebook labeling Diamond and Silk unsafe. That controversy making it all the way to Capitol Hill.
Most recently blocked Trump supporters Diamond and Silk's page that appears to be a pervasive pattern of political bias.
Diamond and Silk, they're going to join us live to react. Coming up.
Plus, an exclusive look at protecting the border from the water.
Sir, were you trying to cross to America?
It's a dangerous thing to start intruding into lawyers' offices. I think there'll be great distrust of relationships that are very important to American society. That's not a good day for democracy.
Not a good day for democracy. Famed legal expert and lifelong Democrat Alan Dershowitz yesterday warning about a dangerous precedent set by the FBI raid on Michael Cohen's office. Saul Weisenberg served as deputy independent counsel in the Whitewater-Lewinsky investigation. He joins us right now from our nation's capital. Saul, good morning to you.
Good morning to you.
Well, when you heard the news that the FBI, at the behest of the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York, had raided 4 different locations regarding Michael Cohen, what did you think?
I thought this was an extremely rare and extremely aggressive prosecutorial move, one that everybody should be concerned about who's concerned about the attorney-client privilege. Doesn't mean it was an unlawful search. We don't know all the facts yet. They went to a magistrate. Magistrate found there was probable cause, so unless they lied to the magistrate or left something out, it appears to be constitutionally sound. But
it's very unusual and worrisome to raid an attorney's office like that, particularly when, as is the case here, I've heard, they're specifically authorized to look for attorney-client communications.
Okay, and then the taint team looks at all that stuff and figures out what they can and cannot show the U.S. attorney. But don't you think, Saul, after Paul Manafort's home was raided back last year, that Michael Cohen might think in the back of his head, you know, maybe they're going to come for me one day?
Well, he shouldn't have thought, maybe he thought that, but he's an attorney, unlike Manafort. And let me explain something about the taint team. The taint team is there to protect otherwise privileged communications that don't fall within the warrant. But if the team comes across a document that is related, let's say, to one of the Russia investigations, and it's there in plain view, under the plain view exception, they can turn that over to Mueller's group. So if they come across a picture of Trump and Putin naked together, for example, that's plain view. That goes straight over to Bob Mueller.
I had not heard about that picture. That would be big news. Saul, let me ask you about this. During the break, we were talking a little bit about this case, and you said you thought the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of Manhattan might have Mueller envy. What are you talking about?
Well, Mueller has been very aggressive, which is what we expect from a special counsel if you want to get things done in a short period of time. That office itself has a history of being somewhat aggressive and arrogant and doing whatever it wants to do. And this could end up being something that I don't think Mueller knew this was going to happen, certainly not the timing of it. I think this could end up very much, as we've already seen, hurting the Mueller operation. I'm very skeptical about why they thought they had to raid that office instead of getting a warrant, instead of getting a search warrant. They better have really have had strong evidence that Cohen was about to destroy that stuff.
Interesting stuff. More details we need before we know the whole story. Saul Weisenberg, former white-collar criminal defense attorney, we thank you very much.
Current white-collar.
Not formal. All right.
Former deputy Whitewater independent counsel.
All right, very good. Saul, thank you very much.
All right.
All right. Meanwhile, we've been telling you about it. Facebook labeled Diamond and Silk unsafe. What do they think about that? They're going to join us live coming up.
Pay attention, please get dressed. It's time for news by the numbers. I'm sitting to deliver it. First 33,000, that's how many vacant positions the VA has right now, and it could be extending patient wait times. The agency needs everything from primary care physicians and social workers to janitors. Next, 60 million, that's how many cars on U.S. roads right now are under recall and in need of repairs. Do you ignore those little cards that come in the mail like I do? Many have faulty Takata airbags that have been linked to deaths around the world. Hope I never have to use them. And finally, number one, Austin, Texas, snagging the top spot for the best city in America to live in. The U.S. News and World Report study looked at things like job markets, the cost of living, and quality of life. Congratulations, Texas.
Facebook's alleged censorship of conservatives taking center stage yesterday on Capitol Hill. Senator Ted Cruz grilling Mark Zuckerberg specifically about Diamond and Silk.
And most recently blocked Trump supporters Diamond and Silk's page with 1.2 million Facebook followers after determining their content and brand were, quote, unsafe to the community. To a great many Americans, that appears to be a pervasive pattern of political bias.
I understand where that concern is coming from because Facebook and the tech industry are located in Silicon Valley, which is an extremely left-leaning place. And this is actually a concern that I have and that I try to root out at the company.
Was that a good enough answer? Here to respond, social media stars and Trump supporters, Diamond and Silk. Diamond and Silk, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Were your ears burning yesterday because Ted Cruz and Mr. Zuckerberg were both talking about you?
Yeah, they were burning, and we saw everything that went down. But you know what? Here's the deal. If Mark Zuckerberg, first of all, he really didn't answer the question. Right. But if he was concerned about his platform being a place for all ideas, then why would he put algorithms in place to censor some ideas? And why is he turning Facebook into a political playground for Democrats. That's what he's doing. He's so concerned about the midterms, the 2018 midterms, because he don't want any interference. It looked like he's trying to interfere in an election is what we see.
That's right.
So he really didn't answer the question as to why he's deeming us, two conservatives, as if we are unsafe to the community. He really didn't answer the question.
What's your status right now? How did you get? I heard you're reinstated. You're no longer being pushed aside. So how are you informed, and what's your status now?
We never communicated with Facebook. Facebook never reached out to us, never called us. We never spoke to Facebook. That's the number one thing. We were never taken down. We were still up. But there's algorithms on our page that will not allow our viewers and our followers and our fans to see our content. We're not coming up in their news feed. We're getting messages still. Listen, I put you all to default, and it went back to the other default where I can't view your stuff. So Facebook need to take off all of those algorithms.
That's right.
Pull them off of our page, not only our page, but all conservative pages.
Right.
Take that stuff off of our page so that our fans, the people that we built our base around, can see and view our content.
They deemed you as unsafe. If you could sit face-to-face with Mark Zuckerberg, I assume you would say yes, that you'd want to do that. What would you say to him?
I will let him know that we are not unsafe. We are not animals.
That's right.
We are two black chicks that's down with politics, that's patriotic, that loves our country, that loves our president, and that loves his agenda.
That's right.
And then I would tell him what measures he needs to put in place so that everybody can be protected.
Yeah.
This is really an easy fix.
That's right.
Sure. He's going to sit down in front of a House committee later today. There might be a member of the House of Representatives watching right now. What question would you like them to ask of the CEO of Facebook?
Why is he being biased towards conservatives,
That's right.
Republicans, people that support our president? And why is he trying to turn his platform into a political playground? And what is he going to do to rectify this with Diamond and Silk? Because we are not unsafe to our community.
What did you think when you were brought up?
And
Sorry,
one
go
more
ahead.
question. What is so unsafe about two black women supporting the president of the United
That's
States,
right.
Donald J. Trump?
What did you think when Ted Cruz said Diamond and Silk in front of Mark Zuckerberg, this famous gazillionaire?
I was first smiling from ear to ear, and I really appreciate Ted Cruz, Senator Ted Cruz. Thank you so much.
Yes.
Him and Senator Tim Scott. Thank both of them so much for just putting it out there, because they spoke for the little people.
That's right.
You know, they spoke for our little voices, and I appreciate that.
But I think that one of the headline stories is nothing's changed. You're still being algorithmed down and still being stopped. Yeah, and hindered.
Suppressed. Take that stuff off of our page.
Yes.
Let me tell you something. This got to be an even playing field.
That's right.
And if Mark Zuckerberg can't make this an even playing field, Facebook is going to be the face without the book and the book with no pages when we're done with this here.
Well, Fox News viewers are probably their biggest users, so they better watch what they're doing. Thanks, guys. Thanks, ladies.
Thank you for having us.
All right. See if their name comes up today.
Right.
It probably will. Many lawmakers are furious with the DOJ for not releasing thousands of documents on several probes and not doing it fast enough.
Give us the information, Mr. Sessions, that we've asked for.
If this Attorney General and Deputy Attorney General can't do it, let's find two who will.
John Lausch, the new attorney brought in to speed up the release, joins us next to respond to those congressmen.
Plus, take a look. This debate was a real drag for that candidate right there.
I got to hear this story.
Reminds me of the plane, that guy that was dragged off.
Yeah, that was great.
We are back with a Fox News alert. President Trump is ready to launch a missile strike against Syria after the alleged chemical attack killed dozens.
Moments ago, the commander-in-chief tweeted this: Russia vows to shoot down any and all missiles fired at Syria. Get ready, Russia, because they will be coming, nice and new and smart. You shouldn't be partners with a gas-killing animal who kills his people and enjoys it. That's the very latest on that. We'll keep you posted throughout the morning.
In other news, the DOJ is under fire, accused by furious GOP lawmakers of stalling those documents tied to multiple 2016 probes.
There are some deadlines this week. We put forth deadlines.
Give us the information, Mr. Sessions, that we've asked for.
You know, it would just take one simple phone call from the Deputy Attorney General to Michael Horowitz, who has all this documents, who's testified under oath that it's not a problem to give it to Congress and it wouldn't impede his investigation. Make that phone call today. Let's get the documents. Let's do it this week. And if this Attorney General and Deputy Attorney General can't do it, let's find two who will.
Wow. Here to respond to that interview yesterday, the man tapped by the DOJ to speed things up, U.S. Attorney John Lausch. John, thanks for joining us. Thanks for doing this. Someone's got to do it. First off, what's your response to them? Let's see all the documents. Just let me have them.
Right. So first, I mean, clearly we need to do a better job at the department and the FBI at getting materials to the House committee to do their job. It was made very clear to me by the Attorney General in giving me this task that we're to produce documents quickly. We're to do so completely under the law, and to do so with, kind of fairness, integrity, and professionalism.
Okay. Well, today is the deadline day. David Nunes has made it very clear he wants to see that 2-page FISA application. Why can't you turn it over by noon?
Okay, and so that FISA application, that particular thing is being handled elsewhere in the department, and I expect that people, are taking his concern and that issue very seriously, and will address it appropriately today.
It seems like something up your alley, because so far the DOJ has not really been helpful to Capitol Hill.
Right. Well, so right now, I mean, my job is to deal with the documents that have been responsive to the Goodlatte subpoena. There's a lot of documents that are being reviewed. We need to do a better job of looking at those more quickly, addressing the redaction issues in those, and then getting them over to the committee.
What, do you believe that Congress has a constitutional right to oversight? And if you do, how is it possible that the DOJ is refusing to hand over these documents?
Yeah, and so look, to be clear, the DOJ is not refusing to hand over anything. And of course, Congress has, they have a right and an obligation to do their job, which includes oversight. I mean, what our job and what my job will be is to ensure that we have a process, a better process than we've had going forward so far, to get them the materials that they're entitled to, while at the same time ensuring that the legal rights of individuals that are in those documents are protected. For instance, there might be grand jury material in some of those documents. We have a legal duty as prosecutors not to provide those materials, and Congress understands that. All of that said, we need to do better. We need to do much better.
Well, a couple of things. Just to answer this, the former chairman of the Oversight, Jason Chaffetz, says this: the relevant documents are all of the documents. If you are produced a subpoena, you comply with all of it. It's not optional. You don't get to hand pick this. So you don't get to hand pick it. Just hand them over.
Right. Well, and the key there is to produce the relevant documents. And I think there's maybe one misnomer that's out there. The number that's been thrown around is actually a much broader set. The 1.2 is a much broader set than documents that are actually related to the Clinton email investigation. And so that's one of the things we need to do.
And I understand the DOJ released another 3,000 to government congressional investigators, I think, on Monday. But what I've heard from one investigator is that most of the copies were useless because they are simply duplications of what they've already gotten in the past.
Yeah, I mean, it's clear to me. I've only been at this for a couple of days now. It's clear to me that we need to do a better job at getting them relevant material.
John, will you clarify? You said at the beginning of the interview, the 2 pages, the FISA warrant application, that's what everyone wants to see. They want to find out what reason the DOJ had to spy on the Trump campaign. And so those 2 documents are very important. But did you say that you're not overseeing that?
I'm not. That's being handled elsewhere.
All right. So will we be able to see those 2? Do you even know?
I don't know.
Okay.
So you're handling.
It's a serious question, and serious people in the Department of Justice will be addressing that today.
So you're handling the document production for the Goodlatte subpoena.
Exactly.
But here's a question: isn't there an inherent conflict with the people who are implicated in the documents, doing the redactions? I said this a moment ago, it's like somebody grading their own paper, because what we have seen in the past is some things were completely redacted, and then congressional investigators found out later, wait a minute, they were just protecting themselves, like that the FISA judge and Peter Strzok, their best friends, that was redacted when it got sent up to Capitol Hill.
Right. I mean, so look, I think it's one of the reasons why I'm here as an outsider, someone from outside of D.C., to come in here in order to look at the process, and in particular to look at the redactions and to make sure, one, that there aren't any redactions based on embarrassment. That's not an appropriate reason, and it's never been an appropriate reason. They should get the materials, while at the same time ensuring that that certain material that lawfully should not be provided, things like grand jury material or
John,
ongoing investigations.
Are you the sole arbiter of what will be redacted and what would not? Are you going to bring anyone to look over your shoulder to agree with it, to wipe out any type of fear that you're not getting the whole story?
Right. Well, look, I'm going to have a team of people working with me to make sure we do a good job.
Are they
here.
the same people who have been doing it?
Some of the people will be the same, but it's going to be my responsibility to make sure that I'm comfortable with the team that's around me in order to ensure that
John,
we're getting the right materials.
Rod Rosenstein, who is Mueller's best friend, one of his closest friends, it appears that he's trying to protect people that are abusing power. What do you see what have you seen in the last few days since you've been appointed this position?
Yeah, I haven't seen that at all. I mean, look, I'm out here to do a job, in the Justice Department. We're doing our very best to get this right, and I think that's one of the reasons why I'm out here.
All right, lastly, John, what is the problem? It's taken months. We've only got 1,000. We need 1.2 million. You just got there a few days ago. Tell everybody what the problem was.
Right. So look, I'm still trying to identify what all of the issues are there. And as I mentioned before, 1.2 million is kind of not the right number as far as relevance. It's clear, though, that we can improve some of the processes along the way to streamline it a little bit more and to ensure that any bottlenecks in the process are removed so we can move these documents more quickly.
Well, could you stop by next week and just tell us, you will have had a week, figure out what the problems were, and tell us the progress being made so far?
Well, I'd be happy to talk with the folks here at the department in order to to talk with people in Congress and you all in order to make sure that we're keeping the American people up to date on what we're doing.
Well, people want to know that the Department of Justice is just and fair and not just protecting people who work.
That was your lucky day when you got appointed this position.
Right. Well, I mean, look, as anyone else who works in the Justice Department, I mean, we have a strong affinity for the Justice Department, and we need to do a good job.
Yeah.
We're counting on you. Okay.
Thank you.
John Lash, thanks. All right, 19 minutes before the top of the hour, straight ahead. House Majority Whip Steve Scalise is going to be with us live. Tell us what Congress is going to be doing today, what they're going to be asking Mark Zuckerberg. And Jason Chaffetz will be here, as well as Newt Gingrich.
Plus, an exclusive look at protecting the border from the water's edge. More of Griff's exclusive tour along the Rio Grande.
This is where they ran out of gas.
Sir, were you trying to cross to America?
Good morning and welcome back. A political candidate is dragged off the stage when she refused to leave a forum that she wasn't invited to.
I am the Democratic candidate, and I have every right to be in this debate. How dare you?
Lee Whitnam rambling on stage at a debate, police desperately trying to make her stop. The Democrat is running for governor of Connecticut. She faces criminal charges. Matthew McConaughey debuts his new bourbon with some help from his mom.
They did say, can you pour your mom a glass?
And look at that, I did.
Thank you very much. Cheers.
The actor, alongside his mom, Kay, launching Wild Turkey Long Branch on Facebook Live. It goes on sale in May. And to that, guys, I say, all right, all right, all right.
All right.
Even though I do a terrible impression. You got to try.
You need your mom to help you with your whiskey.
Right. She's so
I
cute.
like his brother better. Remember his brother was live in studio with the reality show?
No way.
Yes.
Really?
It was on your
it.
show. All right. Meanwhile,
I must have had too much of the bourbon that day.
Absolutely. Hey, the Laredo sector of the southern border stretches about 171 miles of the Rio Grande River with zero border wall.
And our own Griff Jenkins is getting an exclusive look at the mission on the river.
He joins us right now from the U.S. side of the border. He's down in Laredo, Texas. Griff, good morning.
Good morning, guys. As those guardsmen arrive here, they're going to find this one of the toughest sectors to defend and secure because of that river. And so we spent the day out there just to show you the challenges they have in getting their job done. Take a look.
Every single week, we get reports from our partners in the government of Mexico, gun battles, people being killed, down to the south of our border, that is at the hands of the cartel, the same cartel that traffics illegal immigrants and narcotics across our borders through this area.
The mission of the boats is to patrol the river, to make sure we have that that constant presence.
There's just tons of people. Some are standing on the banks, some wave, some are fishing. How do you know who intends to come across? How do you differentiate?
They might be there scouting, waiting for us to pass along the area, and then that's when they'll make the move as far as crossing either individuals or narcotics across the river.
Sir, were you trying to cross to America? Agent Contreras, we rolled up. What was happening there?
So you had 2 individuals that were attempting to illegally enter the U.S. by wading across the Rio Grande River. We actually had agents already up there waiting for them, so that's what kind of turned them back.
In your sort of estimation here, is this the boats, the land, and the sky? Is it that what stops people from entering?
Right, so it's a combination, right? You need personnel, you need the technology, and then you need the infrastructure that's going to give us access to the immediate border.
The Border Patrol is a mobile force. It is a 24/7 job keeping those vehicles at a high state of readiness so that our men and women can go out there and do that job. That's one of the elements of support that the National Guard can bring to bear.
And guys, just to give you some numbers here, last night there were 152 apprehensions, 47 getaways, 26 turnbacks, and they seized 88 pounds of marijuana. To give perspective, we listened to about a 30-second gun battle that happened about 2:30 a.m. across that river, guys.
What a night. Hey, Griff, a question for you. We saw the men in the water, presumably trying to get into the United States. What happens when they're picked up in the water, in international waters, essentially? Are they brought in the United States, catch and release, or do they just say, okay, you go back to your side?
Great question, and I asked the agent who's on the boat with us. He says as long as they're in the water and they begin to turn back, they let them go back, and they count that as a turn back. But if they were to make land, if they were actually going to get on land, then they would take them into custody and start processing them.
Gotcha. All right, Griff Jenkins, great reportage down there at the Rio Grande and Laredo.
Thank you,
sir.
Griff. When we were down there on the border, we were also in the water when the vice president was down there. And the Mexican side, all the Border Patrol agents said sometimes they'll just stand up there on the cliffs and throw rocks at our border agents.
All right.
A lot of free time.
Meanwhile, straight ahead on this Wednesday, President Trump lashing out after his attorney's house and offices raided by the FBI. Would the feds have done that if it was Hillary Clinton's lawyer? Jason Chaffetz says there's a double standard.
All week long, we've been highlighting the important races leading up to the midterms in November, 7 months away. This morning, we are breaking down the Senate race in Ohio, where Republican challengers hope to unseat Senator Sherrod Brown, mainly because the president did so well there during the elections, winning by 8 points. Senior elections analyst and Real Clear Politics guy Sean Trendy joins us. Sean, let's look at this now. First off, Sherrod Brown looked to be a popular person on the Democratic side. Do you list him as vulnerable?
He is vulnerable. He's not as vulnerable as some of the other seats we have in places like Indiana and West Virginia, but he's still on our vulnerable watch list.
But the Republicans have not picked his opponent yet, but the president has. He liked Jim Renacci, who was going to run for governor, and the president said, do me a favor, Jim, run for the Senate seat, and he did. But he's still going against Mike Gibbons. So Mike Gibbons pretty formidable. So where do we think that's going to end up in the primary?
Well, so far, we see Renacci with a pretty substantial lead in the polls. That said, there's a ton of undecideds, and of course, over the last few cycles, we've seen lots of upsets in Republican primaries. So I would not write Gibbons off yet.
So right now, even though the president won by 8 points, his approval rating in the state is about 42 points. Looking at what he's done over the last year and a half, is that going to help or hurt Renacci, and should he embrace the president?
Well, I think especially if President Trump sees a continuation of the uptick in his job approval we've seen since December, that would be a smart move for Renacci. Moreover, in kind of the swing area of the state, in the eastern area of the state, the president's trade policies will play a lot better than they would elsewhere, and that's certainly something Renacci is going to want to warm up to.
Yeah, there's a couple of things that could happen. They could get modernized NAFTA, and they could step off the cliff with China, and it looks like they might be both looking for a off-ramp. So here's an example of some of the main issues. The question is Brown too liberal for Ohio today? Has he left behind the blue-collar worker like many Democrats? On trade, Brown is a long-time trade skeptic, so he kind of agrees with the president on that. And the question is, too, the president never really trailed in Ohio. Does that show a trend in the state towards Republicans? What do you think?
Yeah, that's the big question that I think this race will help us answer, at least. Ohio kind of broke from tradition and was substantially more Republican than the country in 2016. So if Brown finds himself in a dogfight, I think we're looking at a real shift in the Buckeye State.
And I know Governor Kasich is not leaving a popular governor, is he?
He's actually doing okay in his popularity ratings, but he doesn't have as much pull in the Republican primary as he would have had, 4 years ago.
He didn't even show up at the convention, and no one cared.
Yeah, I mean, it isn't going to help Bernacchi at all to be getting Kasich in his camp, I don't think.
Gotcha. It's going to be an interesting race. We'll watch it. Sean Trendy, good job.
Thank you.
All right. Meanwhile, coming up straight in the next hour, unless you have a different rundown, President Trump tells Russia, get ready. Missiles are coming to Syria. We're not afraid of you, nor are we going to back off because you warned us to. We are live at the White House with the latest on the president's tweets and the imminent attack in Syria.
For incredible flooring deals, get